And welcome everybody back to Sports Spot. Today we got a lot to talk about, and as you always know, it's gonna be an interesting show. First thing we gotta talk about, well, is the national championship game between Ohio State and Alabama. It really wasn't much of a game in my opinion. There's not really much to talk about. Alabama got whooped, or not Alabama. Ohio State got whooped, and it was not a good game by any means, and it was a rough game. When I was looking at when I watched it, and it was pathetic, and Ohio State definitely was not ready for that game. Ohio State was not ready for Alabama. Alabama's defense showed up extremely well. Alabama's offense obviously showed up, and it was not a good game. The game ended 52-24, almost a 30-point deficit for Ohio State. And it was not a good game to me. And it was Alabama, like I said, played great all around. And it's really shocking to see what happens here. Because you look at this and you're like, Ohio State actually struggled to keep up. They really struggled to keep up. And in my opinion, it was a struggle the entire game. And it really showed within the team. And it really showed. Part of the reason why I say Alabama played great all around is they had a stud defense that actually showed up. And I said that when I was talking to the CTS interview room last week, Marvin, he said that they didn't play well on defense against Notre Dame. And I was saying that, obviously they've got a couple weeks to figure it out. And I felt like they would. Obviously, it was going to be interesting to see what they did, but they showed up, and it worked. And to me, I think that's part of the point that needed to happen. And then Nick Saban is just probably proved himself as probably the best or head coach of the modern era, or as of all time, winning this 7th championship. And to me, it's really interesting because to me, this is all I've seen. All I've seen is either Nick Saban running the league or running the college ranks, or even other areas. And for him, this was probably one of the biggest accomplishments he's ever going to get. But the real question is when is he going to retire? That's a big question that is going to be being asked recently. Some notable things: Devontae Smith, Heisman winner, had 215 yards, 12 receptions, and 3 touchdowns. It was actually 7 yards away from the record in college football playoff championship game, from breaking the record that was set last year by one of the LSU wide receivers. And sorry, that's soda, but I think it was interesting when I saw that, because to me, he was showing in that national championship game why he was the championship, why he was the Heisman winner, why Alabama was there. And Mac Jones also had a pretty good game. He set the record that was set by Joe Burrow last year, with 36 of 45, having the most completions at a college football game in the playoff game, 464 yards. I can't remember if that was a record, and 5 touchdowns, which he was like 1 or 2 shy. And to me, it was just showing that Alabama was here. Alabama came to play, and it was a very interesting game. Because, again, I had a feeling that this was not going to be close. Alabama's strong, and they've always have been since I can remember. And it'll be interesting. Obviously, I think a lot of people are tired of this 4-team playoff. And I actually was watching TV earlier on a sports show. They were talking about, it was Joel Platt or something like that. And he was talking about, why don't we expand the playoff and use the BCS ranking system, where you use a computer and then you have some sort of analyst and kind of combine them and create a different playoff. And it would make the country happier, because one, you get more football. And he was also saying that you would do it in a area where you would, like, the first round the top two seeds, like Alabama and Clemson, would get byes, kind of like the NFL. It's kind of be set up like the NFL's playoffs. And he was saying that maybe, just maybe, they do it like that. And then also, obviously the highest ranked teams, he did like the top 5 Power 5 conferences, and then like the strongest rest of the Big 5 would be in this playoff. And obviously the higher rank would actually have the home game at their home stadium. And then you move on into the different bowl games for the national into the national championship. And I actually like that route. It makes sense. And honestly, it makes sense to me. And it would probably make a lot more help with this. That being said, it's going to take a lot of convincing the committee and NCAA to change this, because they're seeing good ratings. But I want to know what the ratings were for this game, because they must have dropped off by halftime, because Alabama was kicking the butt out of Ohio State, and it was not good. It was just not good. And to me, I think maybe Bama probably is going to be interesting this next year, as always, because they've got another heir apparent that's going to be a stud. They've got really good running backs, and it's going to be interesting. And it'll be interesting to see what comes of this next year of college football. It'll be interesting. Now, moving on to the Buffalo game, Buffalo versus Indy, the playoffs. The NFL playoffs have started. And to me, it's interesting to look. You look at the game slates, and you're like, wow, this is going to be interesting. And I only picked 3 of the games to kind of talk about, kind of half the games. But the first one was Buffalo versus Indy. And in the first half, both teams were slow. And defense was the king. And I remember Indy trying to go on 4th late in the first half to make it, and make it. They scored, but they didn't. But it pinned Buffalo really deep. They were like on the 2, and they obviously didn't want Buffalo to march down. And it was interesting because the Buffalo offense came alive at that point in the 2-minute drill late in the first half, and they went down the field and marched, and I think if I remember right, they scored. And Buffalo was strong. Buffalo was scary. And they held Derrick Henry, I think it was like under 50 yards. And to me, that's impressive. That is really impressive. If you hold Derrick Henry to under 50, you've got a pretty good team. Both defenses in the second half came out strong on both sides of the ball, and the Colts had a lot of missed up opportunities. They missed field goals, and they missed TD. They had failed touchdown attempts, and you need to be able to opportunize as much as you can, especially in the playoffs when points are becoming a premium, and you need to be able to score like on every drive a touchdown. Otherwise, you're not going to win the game. And the Bills. Not the Bills, but the Colts showed that, losing 27-24. And to me, it was an interesting thing because you look at that and you're like, they really could have done a lot to win this game, and they just didn't. And for this, it was part of the reason why they didn't. And I think it was an interesting thing for them to have happen. Now, then again, you have these games that have happened, and you're looking, and again, it's one of those things where you're like, oh well, this could have happened and this could have happened, and a lot of things could have happened. I'm not gonna lie, I was actually really shocked by the games. And as I said, Buffalo won 27-24. Now, both defenses continue to be strong in their respective points. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens for the Colts next season. But Buffalo came out in the second half, and they started to get the momentum. And the Bills kicker, Tyler Bass, late in the game, comes in and kicks a 54-yarder. And he had at least 10 more yards in him. I'm not going to lie. Tyler Bass had a leg there. And to me, I think it was a stud of a kick. Because again, I think maybe that this kid actually is going to be a good kicker in this league for a long time. Because he came in clutch for this team, and it was a very interesting kick or playoffs. As I said, and again, it was one of those games where they played extremely well. As you can see, I obviously think he had more in him. And again, it was one of those great plays that you want to see from your kicker. You want to see it from him. And obviously, he played really well. It was a 54-yarder in the fourth that really extended this lead to where the points were. And Indy tried hard. And the Colts offense came out, and the tight ends the entire night were showing up, and Phillip Rivers kept feeding them. But it just wasn't enough for this team to work their magic. And it was really struggling for them. And I will say, they missed a key play with a challenge on catch and fumble or down by contact. And it was one of those points where it was bang, bang. It was hard to tell. And it was very, nonchalantly, very rough call. It was, easily missed in real time. And, again, it was really struggling for this team. Now, again, it was rough. Now, moving on to the Washington versus Tampa game. It was a good game. And to me, I think, honestly, Heineke played extremely well, and the moment wasn't too big for him. He had a lot of bad luck with a lot of drop passes and poor offensive line work, but he was making smart reads and played great football. And he's going to be a good backup in this league if he continues. And I honestly think that they're going to be playing like this for a while. And again, I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with this, because again, Tampa was struggling to keep him down. Obviously, they didn't, and it was a good game. Tampa kept Washington. Tampa keeps Washington's line to 1 sack, and the defensive line to 1 sack in the game. And it was really interesting because you look at that and you're like, Washington had a good defensive line of first rounders. A lot of first rounders. I'm pretty sure there's 4 first rounders on that defensive line. And honestly, it worked. Obviously, Tampa wasn't completely settled for this game. And it was going to be an interesting game. As I said, I thought Washington's defense was going to hold them. And I said that Washington's going to give Tampa a run for their money. Obviously, Tampa had the better record, but I was 7-9. What was his name? It wasn't Dwayne Haskins' team anymore. It's an Alex Smith or Tyler Heineke. Or Taylor Heineke. The offense. And honestly, it was a good game. Washington made some really smart play calls in the second half. And again, I think honestly could have won this game. Washington has down the D line the last 4 drafts in the first round. They drafted 4 D linemen in the first round in the last 4 drafts. And it was interesting. As I said, Heineke played extremely well. And the Bucs win. They won 31-23. And honestly, it was a good game. I remember it was a good game, and honestly, perhaps probably one of the better playoff games besides, say, the Browns Steelers, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But again, I think honestly, Washington has the keys. And honestly, they have a good team. It's just going to be, what do they do with the offense moving forward? Obviously, the defense is getting set up for a big run. But what do you do on offense? Because that's your biggest issue right now, is your offense. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. Another thing is Alex Smith. What's he going to do? And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But you've got an offense that you've got Terry McLaurin. You obviously got to want to re-sign him because he's your guy. He's your offensive weapon, and it's going to be good for you to keep him. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, moving forward here, we've got the the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns. Oh, this was a struggle to watch, but it was a good game. Pittsburgh, I'm sorry, but they pooped the bed. They crapped the bed, and it didn't help. The first play of the game was this right here, where it was a poor snap, and honestly, Cleveland picked it up. Cleveland played really well, and they recovered that extremely well. And honestly, it went downhill from there. Big Ben on the next drive, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, throws a pick. And you'll see that here in a second too. And it was a struggle of an offensive game in the first half for Pittsburgh. They couldn't get anything rolling, and it was a struggle. And like I said, this play, it's Pouncey. Pouncey is a Pro Bowl, All-Pro setter that had a bad snap, and it led to the downfall and the crumbling of Pittsburgh. And honestly, Pittsburgh had a meltdown. This is the play right here I was talking about with the interception on the next drive, and Ben just gave it to him. Ben was falling off. Big Ben has fallen off. Ben Roethlisberger has fallen off a cliff. And honestly, it's terrifying to see. And it's interesting because you look at this and you're like, oh, this isn't good to watch. And honestly, Cleveland had a good game. The defense struggled as well. In the first half, 3 interceptions and a fumble. In this first half of the Pittsburgh offense, Cleveland, 0 turnovers, and played really good football. Honestly, I think Cleveland could actually give Kansas City a run for their money. Now, don't quote me on this. I think Kansas City loses. Kansas City's been on a downhill playing recently, and Cleveland's been playing hot. And honestly, it could be very interesting to see what happens, because you look at this, you look at how they play, and look at how Cleveland's been playing. Cleveland's been playing with ferocity. They've been playing monstrous. And honestly, this is obviously one of the best teams that they've faced. And as you look at how the season has gone, Pittsburgh went from one of the best teams in the league to falling off a cliff and not doing well. And to me, it's interesting because you look at this and you look at how they play and look at how things transpired, and it didn't work out very well. And to me, it was very telling about that. And honestly, it could have happened a lot different, and it could have been a different game. The Browns' running ground game was also very dominant and cruising in the first half. And then it was interesting. Then they kind of gave Pittsburgh some momentum entering halftime, the defense of the Browns. And I'll talk about what I was talking about earlier. But the Browns stuttered out of the gate in the second half. And Steelers fired 23 unanswered points. Now, you can't have that happen, because then it changes the momentum of the game. And the Browns move around and change the game plan as they're noticing that the Pittsburgh Steelers were picking up on their run. And they moved to a more pass-focused offense. And it was working. They were running to set up the pass for Baker. And Baker performed really well. Honestly, it could have been a different game if Pittsburgh had shown up. Now, here's one thing. Juju Smith-Schuster should have kept his mouth shut. Earlier in the week, he had said a very interesting thing that was probably a thing that you don't usually say. You should say. He said, and I quote, "I think that is still the same Brown team I play every year. I think they're nameless gray faces. They have a couple of good players on their team, but at the end of the day, the Browns is the Browns. Now, Cleveland took that and ran with it. They were mad. And Baker, on Instagram before the game, posted a little clip here and said, and with the caption, Browns is the Browns. Obviously, Baker was mad, and rightfully so. And it was a monstrous game for them. It was very interesting. And honestly, it could be what happens in the future. Now, again, you gave the Browns something to play, come out and play physical, which they did. The Browns were a more physical football team. And honestly, you don't give a team that, like as Marvin said last week, you don't give a team that bulletin board thing. You don't give them that bulletin board, hey, let's go kick their butt. And it worked. And he came out after the game and said he doesn't regret what he said. He should. He caused the team to lose, essentially, by saying, oh, Browns is the Browns. And it's not right. You have to take responsibility for what you said. And it's rough. Chase Claypool commented after the game on a TikTok live saying, bad loss, but the Browns are going to get clapped next week, so it's all good. You lost. You got to start. You can't say that after a loss. If you win, say what you want, but you lost, and it's not obviously going to work. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. And I think, honestly, Juju's entering a contract year. And Pittsburgh might not pick him up. And obviously, it's going to be interesting. Moving forward here, obviously the Browns move on. They won 46-37. The Rams beat the Seahawks 30-20, and they go on to face the Packers because the Saints beat the Bears 21-9. And Washington losing to the Buccaneers 31-23. The Saints will go on and face the Buccaneers, and they face for the third time this season. And this is a record, by the way. The oldest, I think it's 85 years and so many months and days old. The oldest playoff game and the oldest game for it's quarterbacks facing off. Oldest game with quarterbacks facing off with Drew Brees and Tom Brady. And it's going to be an interesting game, that one, as they have faced 3 times this year. Now, as I said, Green Bay faces the Rams. Green Bay had bye week. The Ravens to face the Bills because the Bills are the 2 seed and the Ravens are a little higher seed here, as it looks. And then, obviously, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. The Ravens are the 5 seed. They're the lowest seed, or highest seed compared to the remaining Browns here, who are the 6. And the Chiefs are going up against the Browns in Kansas City. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Coming up after this small little ad by Anchor, we'll continue with a little bit of some injury news and more coming up in the show. And I'll see you here in a second. How's it going, everybody? This is Christian from SportsBot. If you haven't heard of Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can be heard on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make your money on your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Now, for me, it's what I'm using right now. It'll be very important for you to make a podcast, and again, it's free. Now, I'm using this upload anywhere you get your podcast, but Anchor's made me feel as though I'm important again, and has allowed me to get my voice out. And like I said, it's free. And I've enjoyed every second of it. Go download their free app or register on anchor.fm. And thanks again for listening to this podcast. And let's get back to the show. And welcome back, everybody, to SportsBot. As you saw, as I was saying, there's some injuries happening right now with the playoffs. Cooper Kupp is injured, but he's expected to play. But the bigger one I want to talk about for the Rams is defensive tackle Aaron Donald. He's going to play, but he's definitely not going to be 100% to play on Saturday. He has torn rib cartilage, and honestly, it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be 100%, and it's going to hurt this defense. Obviously, that defense has a lot of weapons, but I don't think it's going to be good enough, and the offense is going to stutter against a Green Bay offense that's standing up stronger. They're learning how to play together again. They're learning how to stop this run. Now, again, I think some things are going to be interesting, and it's going to be a focus point for this team moving forward as this happens. Now, again, I think some things are going to change, and obviously Donald will play a little bit less and rotate a little bit more in and off the field to make sure his ribs stay good. But that defense is great because of him. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. Now, again, I think it's going to be coming down to, per se, Donald playing as much as he can, but I don't know where it's going to happen. Because you've got Aaron Jones, who's a monster. A.J. Dillon's going to be running in the cold. Jamal Williams is going to be running in the cold. And you've got a pissed off Aaron Rodgers. This Rams defense is going to have to step up big time. And I think the Packers actually win this game. Now, part of the reason why I say that is because of Jaire Alexander, the Packers' number one corner. Facing number one wide receivers throughout the season, he's played extremely well. In week 1, Adam Thielen, the Vikings wide receiver, had 4 receptions on 6 targets for 66 yards. Marvin Jones Jr. Had 2 receptions, 3 targets, 11 yards. And Jaire had a pass breakup. Week 3, Emmanuel Sanders, 0 receptions on 1 target and 0 yards and a pass breakup. Calvin Ridley, 0 receptions on 2 targets and 0 yards. Mike Evans, 0 receptions on 1 target for 0 yards. Will Fuller, 0 receptions on 1 target, 0 yards and a pass breakup. Justin Jefferson, 1 reception on 2 targets and 12 yards. Richie James Jr., 1 reception, 1 target, 5 yards. T.Y. Hilton in week 11, 0 receptions on 1 target for 0 yards. Week 12, Allen Robinson, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 28 yards. Week 13, Alshon Jeffrey, 1 target for 0 yards and 0 receptions. Marvin Jones Jr., 1 reception, 2 targets, 5 yards, and a pass breakup. Robbie Anderson, 1 reception, 3 targets, 6 yards in week 15. Week 16, A.J. Brown, 1 reception, 1 target for 10 yards. And Allen Robinson was shut down completely. Jaire Alexander's going to be posting some good numbers in the future. And that Packers defense is stepping up. And it could be interesting to see what happens. Because you look at this team and you look at what they were doing last year. They couldn't stop the run. You go back and look at the playoff NFC Championship game, and they couldn't stop the run. They really couldn't, and it was very interesting to see. They let 49ers running back run for, I think it was like 220 yards, and that was the issue. They had to figure out how to stop the run, and it came in a little bit into the beginning of the year where they couldn't stop the run, and then as the year kind of moved forward, they stopped the run. They figured out their weakness. And obviously they're becoming more of a complete team. And it's very interesting to see what they do with this in the game moving forward. Now, the series of events here are going to be interesting. The Texans obviously fired GM and head coach Bill O'Brien earlier this year. They are now on the moving point here of hiring new people. Texans hire Nick Caserio, who is the former GM, who is a Patriots executive, and that kind of got somebody mad. Obviously, Caserio was probably one of the better choices in this era, generation of GMs currently. But that pissed off Deshaun Watson. He was promised to be a part of the GM and head coaching hires, and he was basically lied to. And he hired a guy and wasn't even given the opportunity to talk to ownership about, he didn't even get a word. He learned how we did of how the Texans hired a new guy. And honestly, that's part of the issue. Now, another thing is, they haven't requested an interview with a guy that he wants to be his head coach. And an offensive coordinator that was recommended by Patrick Mahomes. And that offensive coordinator is Eric Bieniemy. That is until today, the day I'm recording this on January 12th, 2021. They requested to have him come. Now, another thing, Watson's, as I said, not very happy. And rightfully so. Honestly, things could have went better. But again, it's not good. You can't have stuff like this happen. And to me, things should have changed right then and there. And honestly, it was interesting to look at. He was really mad, and I don't blame him. He has every right to be. He was promised one thing and lied to by the ownership. And honestly, his anger went up. And to me, that's something that needs to be known. And it's interesting to see what this does. Because you look at these things and you look at what happened, and it's not a good look. It really isn't. Because you get this type of thing in like terrible ownership areas. And it's interesting because you look at this and you're like, man, what went wrong? Where did this all go? And where did this all go wrong? And it was very, very hard to look at. And to me, I think Watson has, like I said, every right to be a pissed off guy. He was lied to. And honestly, every right to be. And it was going to be interesting to see what he does, as he's being told, even with this, stand your ground. Andre Johnson, who used to play for the Texans a long time ago, and he had said that he was fine with everything, and not fine. He was promised these things, and you want to make sure your guy is good. You want to make sure he's in a good place, and it really is not good. And I think it's terrible to look at as this happens, because again, you promised this guy, you promised him that he would get say, and you didn't give him any say. You didn't come to him for any advice. And it's very hard to look at when this happens. Chris Mortensen reported that the unhappiness with the Houston Texans are accurate, and the sources close to the quarterback say he's still angry about the team's insensitivity to social justice, including hiring practices after the franchise failed to interview the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, the past week. Sources say Watson could play hardball with the Texans about a trade. His new $156 million no-trade contract includes a no-trade clause, but informed speculation from a source is that he would consider the Miami Dolphins, in which Tua Tagovailoa and added compensation goes to Houston. Let the denials begin, but it will be an off-season story and a puzzle of sorts that promises some drama. And it was said that his anger when they traded Hopkins was a 2. It is now a 10. And I don't blame him. He deserves to be that mad. It's very interesting to see what they do. And as I said, they did finally do it. And it'd be interesting. As I said as well, that he has a no-trade clause, but he could waive it if he goes to Miami for a quarterback-to-quarterback trade with Tua Tagovailoa. Now, the John Wolford injury that happened in the Rams game, I'm not going to show it for obvious reasons. it was a scary injury. But there's details that he is okay. McVay is saying it was just more of a stinger, which is kind of a nerve damage type, or nerve type pain. And it was worried. And people are saying it was a dirty hit by Jamal Adams. It's hard to tell. In my opinion, it could have been. But I think it could have been different. It could have been something that it obviously changed the game because obviously Jared Goff wasn't starting. It was John Wolford because Sean McVay didn't want Goff getting hurt. And it was the right move, honestly. But honestly, the world had other plans and wanted Goff to play, apparently. And Goff played really well with a broken thumb. And again, as I said, it was very interesting. Now, the other player that was involved in the injury of John Wolford has been beaten up the entire season. He's got a torn labrum in his left shoulder, and is planning to have surgery. That one was kind of unknown. The injury that we do know of is his 2 broken fingers. He has planned surgery for that as well. But there's a new injury that we don't know about. And we don't know what the injury is, and that is a right shoulder injury that might need surgery. Man, he is playing through some tough injuries currently, and it's interesting to see how he's actually playing stellar ball too. And honestly, Adams is probably one of the hardest playing players in this league. And he came from a team that went 0-13 for most of the time. And honestly, he could have changed some things. And it's very interesting to see what they do. And honestly, I think he could even play extremely well moving forward. And I think he could still be a good player for the Seattle Seahawks defense. Now, so I had some head coaching decisions here. One of them anyway. Urban Meyer. He was being asked. He's been getting talked to a lot. He's might be the next Jaguars head coach, Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. He's asking $12 million a season though. That's the issue. But he's had regular conversations with the owner, and honestly, it's interesting because they've had regular conversations, and Meyer has been assembling a coaching staff for if he does get that job. Here's the thing. Does he take it? Does he want the money? Does he want to play for more? Does he want to coach more? Does he want to be able to do this for another time? Because remember, he has retired from coaching due to health issues twice. And it's interesting because you look at this and you're like, does he take the job because he wants to, or is he taking the job because he feels like he needs to? Honestly, Jacksonville's is one of my, and I'll get into this in a little bit, and one of my top 2 most entertaining head coaching jobs because of what's going on. Now, of being the first overall pick and being able to get your choice of quarterback, in my opinion, is Trevor Lawrence, if Urban Meyer does go to Jacksonville, is not the number 1 overall pick. It will be Justin Fields, because Justin Fields is a guy that was recruited by Urban Meyer. That's the thing. Urban Meyer recruited Justin Fields, not Day. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this development. Now, again, I honestly think Jaguars are probably one of the more entertaining topics or coaching vacancies, because it's going to be the first overall pick. You get your restart. It's interesting to see what they do. The Dallas Cowboys are cleaning house on the defensive side of the ball for 2 spots. Defensive coordinator, who they fired their defensive coordinator, and they hired, actually, Dan Quinn, former Falcons head coach. And they had the 5th worst defense in the league. The 5th worst. That's an issue. You can't be in. You go back and look at the game that they had against the New York Giants, and it was a struggle fest on defense. You need to figure that out. And honestly, Mike McCarthy needs to figure something out, and it's going to be interesting to see. Now, honestly, it could happen soon, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. Dwayne Haskins could be getting a second chance earlier than most expected. And he had a visit with the Carolina Panthers, offering him this visit. It'll be interesting to see what comes to this. I don't think the Panthers sign him. It'd be interesting if they do, but it could be something that just happens. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Now, Jason Garrett, the former Dallas Cowboys head coach and current Giants offensive coordinator, could be getting a new chance to be a head coach again. And it's going to be at one of my another good head coaching job with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Garrett, the thing is Garrett he had a meddling owner in Dallas with Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones always had a lot more say than Garrett did, I feel like, in the player signage, because it's Jerry Jones. He thinks he's the owner. He thinks he should be able to say something. And obviously, Jason Garrett didn't perform well with what he was given half the time. And he had Dak Prescott, and he had Ezekiel Elliott. But it's something that needs to be known, because look at this. LA doesn't have a meddling owner. Jason Garrett can do kind of what he wants to, and actually, if he gets a good bond with the GM, he can get whatever he wants. It's going to be something to note moving forward here, and it'll be interesting to see what they do, because you look at this and you look at what Jason Garrett's done in New York. As I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, he's the play caller. It's going to be something that needs to be known, because again, Jason Garrett isn't probably a bad coach. I may have been bagging on the owner. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Now, the Modern Era Pro Hall of Fame finalists were announced. And some of these guys I know I've watched for a long time in my life, and some I haven't. But here are the finalists. Jared Allen, defensive end who played for the Vikings. Rondé Barber, running back. Tony Baselli, I think it was the running back. Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Alan Faneca, Torrey Holt, Calvin Megatron Johnson, John Lynch, Peyton Manning, Clay Matthews Jr., Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Zach Thomas, Reggie Wayne, and Charles Woodson. Now, the two I know are probably more than likely going in are Calvin Johnson and Peyton Manning. Now, I have a good feeling about Jared Allen, Reggie Wayne, and Charles Woodson. I don't know much about the others. It'll be very interesting coming forward. Now, Doug Peterson. He was not safe, according to Chris Murtaugh. And in his tweets about Doug Peterson, he was saying that he was not safe, as there was disagreement within their area, in their meetings. And if Peterson could have been out if Jeffrey Lurie was not confident about Peterson's vision going forward after the two meet. Lurie's concerns extend well beyond Wentz. There was rumors saying that he could be traded to the Jets, as Peterson has connections to the Jets GM. And then the bomb-breaking news that happened the day before I am recording this on January 12th, so on January 11th, he got fired. Now watch the Jets. Go watch what happens with the Jets here, because I would not be surprised if Doug Peterson gets that head coaching job. And honestly, it's interesting to see, and there may be some turmoil going on. Apparently, coming from what I heard on the Herd with Colin Cowherd, that's not an entertaining job to me. That's a dangerous job to take. You have no job security, essentially. One bad season, you could be gone. Unrealistic expectations. Andy Reid, winning record, went to the Super Bowl. One bad season, gone. Chip Kelly, winning record, gone after one bad year. Now Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, and had a winning record, had a couple bad seasons, gone. That Super Bowl was 3 or 4 years ago now. 3 or 4. That's the thing. You don't want a head owner that gives you unrealistic expectations, and that's part of the issue. And it'll be part of the issue moving forward. And it's going to be interesting. And again, this is a team that needs this. They need to change what they are. And it seems like they're blowing it up and starting over. Now, again, it's interesting. Now, Alex Smith, the quarterback of the Washington football team, is weighing in on his future in the NFL. As a lot of us know, I've covered it quite a bit in my show on the radio and here. Alex Smith has had a terrible leg injury and is going to miss some time, is going to be thinking about his future. As obviously he's wanting to play still, but he's going to have to talk to his family. And it's going to be hard to say what's going on here. And it'll be interesting to see. Because Alex Smith is probably one of the most inspirational quarterbacks that has come out of this season. Tom Brady actually talked to him after the game that they had against each other and says, and I quote, "Hey, I'm so bleeping proud of you, bro. You're the bleeping unbelievable. You're bleeping unbelievable. You know that? You're an inspiration to us all of us. You're unbelievable and always here if you need me." And honestly, he is. He's going to win comeback player of the year. And it's interesting because you look at how he's come back. 17 surgeries in 9 months. His leg becoming septic. Went from saving the leg to saving a life, to rehabbing for a year, to being on a football team. Yeah, he was a third stringer, but being on and making it to the final team, to the final 53-man squad, and then starting a game. Coming in and then starting and leading wins, being 4-1 at the start of the season. He played well. It was very interesting. I hope he does well, and I hope he makes the right decision for him and his family. I don't want to push him into this. And he's going to be a good he's not going to go to the Hall of Fame by any means, but he's going to be remembered as one of the greatest comeback player of the year stories ever. And it's going to be sad to see him go. Now, here are my top 2 head coaching gigs that are open. And it is, as I said, one of them is the Jacksonville Jaguars. The other is the Chargers. You have your star quarterback in LA. You have a good defense. And you get a decent draft pick. It's going to be a good team in a few years if you get the right head coach. Now, Jacksonville, they're starting over. You get a fresh, clean slate, and you get a quarterback of your choice. What more can you ask for? Philly is probably my least favorite. And it's for obvious reasons. There's mental breakdowns going on over there. And it's not a good look. Again, Doug Peterson probably wanted out. He doesn't want to be told. I don't know if this is a true quote, but it was said that he doesn't want to be told what to do anymore. And honestly, that's interesting because you look at that and you're like, something's going on there, and it's unrealistic expectations. Excuse me. And so it'll be interesting to see. There's another offensive coordinator vacancy, though, that just happened the day I'm recording this, and actually right before I recorded this. Seahawks fire offensive coordinator. Well, they let go, I guess. They didn't really fire him. They're letting him walk. Offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. This comes after a meeting where it was evident that both sides had philosophical differences between him and Pete Carroll. And the two decided it was best to part ways on both sides. For both, it was better to do that because you don't want the tension between your offensive coordinator and your head coach. Obviously, Pete Carroll is a defensive-minded head coach, and Brian was struggling. Pete Carroll wants some more better running plays. He wants the team to run the ball better. And recently, they haven't been running the ball very well. Part of the issue to me is they don't have a solid running back. they need to draft a running back in this draft if they want a better running philosophy. And that's because you need the running back in this team to be able to help Russell Wilson move the ball. You go look at Green Bay. You go look at some of the other teams like Cleveland and San Francisco. They're winning games because of their running game is setting up the pass and play action. And the play action is taking over the league currently, and it's showing a lot. And honestly, Pete Carroll needs another championship ring. He wants to win another Super Bowl, and I don't blame him. And I feel like Brian Schottenheimer's going to find another job somewhere else. Obviously, he's a good coach. But all good things must come to an end. Now, with things coming to an end, Bears defensive coordinator Chuck Pagano has decided to retire. Some of you may not know who he is based off the Bears, but he coached the Colts for most of the Andy Dalton era. Not Andy Dalton, sorry. Andrew Luck era. From 2012 to 2017. He was 53-43 as a head coach. And honestly, he had a great career. And it was a very long and turmoil one. I looked at his stats before the show. But again, it's sad to see him go. He was a good defensive-minded guy. And it's going to be interesting to see who the Bears hire as their defensive coordinator. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys next time. And you guys can catch me on Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get your platforms, as well as YouTube. So you can find me on YouTube if you look up SportsBot, or you look up my name with Christian Lushen, and Loschen, or you can find me on Twitter, Christian.105 at Christian.105, as well as Instagram, Christian.105. And that's it, guys. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys next time.